everyone and welcome to Tinro's channel, and I'm gonna be discussing today all waifus guide in code Geass. We're gonna be discussing which waifu Lelouch loved the most, which waifu was the best for Lelouch, and we're gonna start today by analyzing Kallen. It's very important. Let's get started, and I'm gonna be increasing my small little skyblock empire here on Hypixel at the same time. Alright, so first of all, we're gonna get into this Kallen character, discuss a few scenes. It's not gonna be just one video, we won't be able to cover it in just one video, so let me see real quick how far I am on the collection of iron. I have got a long way to go. We have to analyze Kallen as a person. Kallen has got a huge fan base to herself. Many people believe she is the best waifu, many people love and appreciate her loyalty and the great amount of fan service she is giving to this great anime. So let's get into her scenes, let's see how she behaves, how she acts, and what she actually thinks about herself and others. Actually, many people think that the analysis kinda goes from the beginning of anime towards the end. Actually, when we have to analyze a character, we have to look at the character arc, but not always in a very specific order. Sometimes we just have to do it in a different order, and that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely great. We will have to do that if you want to understand Kallen's character, and I suggest we're gonna start with the first episode of the second season, and that is the bunny scene. So the thing is, somehow Japanese anime has a certain symbolism that it uses for the sake of actually showing us different types of people, and the great language that everyone knows is the language of cats and bunnies. So cats and bunnies are very different, and different people identify themselves as bunnies and cats to be their spiritual animal in the world of anime. We're gonna discover why, and as you may have or may have not noticed, usually we have a situation when people identify themselves as cats and bunnies and bunnies in terms of romance, in terms of their relationship, and somehow that all makes sense. So there is a certain reason I brought up cats and bunnies today, because Code Geass is no exception. It actually shows us certain cats and certain bunnies, certain people who have been clearly identifying themselves, and we see Kallen being dressed up as a bunny at the first episode of the second season. Now, before I proceed, I'm gonna quickly mention that this video is not for kids. If you're below 13 years old, leave, because we are actually discussing content that's not for kids. So yeah, why would you be interested in that? And in terms of Minecraft, I'm literally mining. It's no fun. It's no fun getting your collection up to 50k iron ingots. Kallen is quite known as the most undressed character in the game. The only one who is close to that, but a little bit inferior, is C2. We have quite a lot of scenes. We have the first episodes of the first season. They feature a shower scene. It's not very important, because as we understand, every single person has to shower. There is nothing bad in that. And many people can say, come on Tina, there is fan service. It's absolutely fine. There is nothing bad in having fan service present. And partially I'm gonna agree with you. But also there is a few things that are wrong with that. So the thing is, for example, I don't see Shirley constantly being undressed, and that just indicates that she is a different type of waifu. That's all I'm saying. But the other problem with Kallen, when is she undressed and why is she undressed? So the only moment that I won't be able to provide full commentary on is the moment when Kallen is actually at her home and she lies on her bed being undressed. Once again, something that C2 also does in the series, but she does it in front of a man, so it kind of makes sense. Apart from this only scene with Kallen when it really there is no big reason to it. It's just what she did, but it fills up the statistic that Kallen is actually having the first place in this very particular statistic. The shower scene is interesting because it's not just Kallen taking a shower like most normal people do. Actually, with Kallen, she wanted to clear her name before Lelouch just so he wouldn't think she's a terrorist, but he also needed to clear her name and prove to her that he isn't Zero, so his identity would stay hidden. The problem is with that little moment is that she decides to do it in the shower. There is literally an accident that doesn't particularly shove her into the situation when she has to do it in the shower. There is literally no obligation for her to do it there. There was an accident, a slight thing that was complicated, so they wanted to introduce Kallen to the student council. Rivals got nuts as usual, and the result was that Kallen had wet clothes and she had to take a shower before proceeding the conversation. And the key point I'm having is before proceeding to the conversation, so she didn't have to combine those two together. There is something about that. So we are not saying very often that an important conversation would actually be held in while one person is taking the shower and another isn't. It gets a little bit weird. On the other side, we have the situation when Lelouch have decided to make a phone call right into the shower room, so he probably kind of expected that. That's an interesting thought. And that's the shower scene, and it's already the first weird thing that Kallen does that indicates her first character is a waifu. And then we have another scene. We also have, well, as I said, the bunny scene. We're gonna concentrate on discussing today in this current video about Kallen. And that is a scene located at the first episode of season 2. Why is this scene particularly weird? Well, because she wanted to dress up as a bunny. And because that very particular building was placing a bunny costume with a very particular meaning. Well, the thing is, you see, bunnies were not just a thing, just some sort of cosplay of a bunny. The bunnies in that building the building was a black market, and a little bit of a reminder that Lelouch and Rollo decided to go gambling. C2 and literally everyone else in their armada knew that Lelouch and Rollo would be going to gamble in that black market building. So they went there, and there were tons of ways to cosplay. You can cosplay as a person who works there, as a waitress, for example, and that was totally fine. There are waitresses in there. Also, considering the fact that Lelouch and Rollo, literally a couple teenagers, were able to get their way into the building, there was no problem for professional terrorists to get their way in there as a guest. Actually, dress up in some sort of cute dress and also infiltrate the building. So when we think about Kallen's bunny costume, it was not necessarily the only option. Now, why am I concentrated on the bunny costume so much? What is a bunny in the first place? Well, the bunnies and the cats, it's all about the conversation of the bunnies and the cats. This content is not for kids, because we are talking about anime that involves human trafficking. So, this building has certain Japanese people for sale, and not just Japanese people. There is a guy who's a human trafficker, the Britannian. He brought over Japanese women for sale, and he forced them all to dress up as bunnies. So naturally we are dealing with the prostitution market. He sells cute young Japanese ladies against their consent. He's selling them on the market, and Kallen decides to disguise herself as a potential prostitute. So the problem here is, as I said, that wasn't her only choice to dress up, but there is a much important and interesting symbolic to this sexual act, because it's not just Kallen wanted to dress up somehow in some sort of costume and dressing up in that. It was also when she did it. Let's have a quick recap that it was 1 year. For 1 year she didn't see Zero. Zero has disappeared. She knew his identity. She was in love with Zero. She didn't care about Lelouch, but she is interested in Zero. And so knowing that Lelouch is Zero, she is now interested in him ever since the end of the first season. Not only Kallen will see, she's interested in for the first time in 1 year. Well, at least one-on-one, not through the cameras, but he will also see her for the first time. He will regain the memories, and he will finally see her after 1 year of not being able to. So we are having this interesting story. It's not just being dressed up, it's being dressed up for the first time after a long time of being separate. And this is the costume that Kallen went with. And we see what is Lelouch's reaction to that. What is Lelouch's reaction? When Lelouch regains his memories, at first he pays no attention. We see that he thinks that she's one of those waitresses or prostitutes who are being for sale. And he treats Kallen with lots of respect. So there is no bias in his actions. He doesn't remember who he is, but he still thinks no differently of a Japanese or a Britannian, of an enslaved person or not. And she points out to him that she is just a Japanese person. That has no effect on Lelouch. After Lelouch has remembered who he is, we have a situation where Lelouch asks Kallen to change out of those clothes. That's interesting, and the way he does it is a very polite request, because Lelouch kind of taunts her, teases her over the costume. He asks when she's gonna change out of the costume, and she calls him a pervert for that. Well, there's literally no indication. She's dressed up in a very seducing dress, so it's reasonable that not every man will be fine with this. So he makes that request, and the thing is that we may still think that there was no option. For example, Situ was in charge and she forced Kallen to dress as a bunny for no reason. Actually, we see the biggest proof that Kallen wanted to be dressed up as a bunny. And this is why bunny is her spiritual animal. Is because when Kallen is being asked to change out of her clothes, she doesn't. Now think about it once again. For example, she could have bring her uniform to the battle. Honestly, piloting a robot, doing any military action is much easier to do when you have a uniform. This is kind of the reason why uniforms were invented, because normal clothes won't cut it. She could bring her costume to the battle. She knew there would be a battle, and she didn't bring any spare clothes. She brought nothing. She was literally fighting in the bunny costume this whole time until the end of this first and second episode arc. I think it's the end of the second episode. She was finally secured, and the Chinese embassy became the first room, the territory of the new country, and Kallen was able to change. Throughout the whole battle, she was still fighting that she had literally no desire to change out of this clothes, and this is when Lelouch makes a second request. Now the thing is, with the second request, you cannot make it. There is literally no way, no comfortable, normal way that a man can make such a request to a woman one time. Well, he's gonna be called a pervert, or he will be found creepy, but making it the second time is suicide. With Lelouch, he doesn't make the second request in a form of request this time. This time we are seeing that Lelouch just puts his jacket, he takes off the jacket of his uniform and puts on Kallen. This is a very important scene that indicates their relationship. It's not because Kallen was called on anything like that in particular. If she was called, she never indicated that she was, and if she was, she could take care of that. But it was right after that conversation when Lelouch made a point that it was uncomfortable for him, and then she ignored it. Now, why is Lelouch so uncomfortable with the whole bunny costume? We are having a particular moment. Once again, everything should be analyzed in a context. And in that particular context, Lelouch was actually in the battle. He had to lead out his troops. They were trapped. There was another Clovis kind of guy who was in the way. He had to be defeated. That wasn't big of a deal. That wasn't anything big of a problem. The big problem actually started when there was Roller robots, because there was Roller, another Geass wielder. It was a big complication. He was defeating the whole army. And the hard part about this, nobody knew who this robot was. Lelouch was getting killed because of it. There was this whole army of the remaining Black Knights vaporizing because of that. That was one of the greatest warriors committing suicide just to save Lelouch. It was a complicated moment. There were lives lost, and there would be even more lives lost if Lelouch didn't put all of his brain towards it. Now, the thing is about a human brain, any human brain, regardless of gender, nationality, or anything else, a human brain works very simple, so you can basically work at 100%. You can put a lot of productive thought into something only if you're putting your all to it. So you cannot have any other parts of your body or any other organs functioning. So if you're eating and thinking, that's a bad idea. This is why, for example, you're studying and eating, that's a bad idea. You won't be able to study because your body is busy with digestion. And it's also similar with the other activities. And the problem is with Kallen's costume. Kallen's costume puts Lelouch's mind to another direction. With that direction, he cannot think of the battle. He cannot give his all, because the problem is every time the body gets busy with something, like for example, as I said, eating. Every time our body gets onto something, onto some action, the brain turns off. It's just the brain is not the priority. It's just the first thing the body is gonna turn off is the brain. If something else is in the way, it's just gonna stop the thinking. This is what really bothers Lelouch, is that he cannot save lives. If there's gonna be Kallen like that standing around. We already know that Kallen dressed up like that on purpose. She has her own things to care about. Lelouch has his own things to care about, especially in that episode. Those things are a little bit different. And this is why we are having the situation when Lelouch makes that request twice, indicating that he is not comfortable with the bunny costume because of the battle, and that in the result of this conversation, he pulls his jacket on her to prevent her from being distracting. This is the analysis of that first episode and the analysis of Kallen's bunny identity and how she's using it very successfully, by the way. She's a very popular girl in the Black Knights ranks, but she's more interesting in the one who leads the Black Knights. We're gonna continue the analysis in the next video. If you like the current video, please subscribe. I'm having a problem here, I'm gonna be honest with you, that YouTube literally subtracts the views from me. And it literally subtracts the subscribers, so please check that you are subscribed, because YouTube literally thinks I'm being dishonest, which is none of the case at all. I'm just literally doing my job. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not even doing any marketing in the moment. Nothing suspicious that YouTube could accuse me of. I'm completely at the clean, and yet YouTube thinks I'm evil. Please prove him wrong by checking that you are subscribed, and about the notification bell, you leave it however you like it. If you like it to be all clicked or non-clicked or whatever, just be notified of what you want to be notified. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the continuation of the Kallen video.